Playoff game, C.J. Stroud won Offensive Rookie of the Year with an NFL best 16-4 touchdown to interception ratio while targeting wide receivers. He ranked second in yards per attempt, ranked second in 20-yard completions to wideouts. And you do imagine these numbers could end up even better in 24 when they add Stefon Diggs. But Mina, Diggs had no fewer than 154 targets in any of his 4 seasons in Buffalo. How can he make an immediate impact on a Texans offense that already impressed a lot of people last season?
Yeah, Stefon Diggs, we were just talking about his loss in Buffalo, how we don't think it's going to be dramatic, but I do still think he is a very good wide receiver, an elite route runner, so good at the line of scrimmage. And to that end, what I see him adding to this Texans offense is the ability to present an easy target to C.J. Stroud on short passes. Last year, Stroud, when he threw for 10 or more yards, third QBR, but on less than 10 yards, he dropped to 21st. And I think that's where Diggs comes in. Nico Collins, so good working that intermediate part of the field. Tank Dell is your deep threat. I think Diggs is a complementary piece and could unlock a level that we haven't seen in already a very good passing attack in Houston.
Well, Mina makes some great points, and I think the expectations are high for this football team. And this team ran under the radar last year. New head coach, rookie quarterback. Everybody said, they're going to be okay. They surprised everybody. And I think if you're C.J. Stroud, I would have a long conversation with Josh Allen. I would personally call him and say, how do I handle Stefon Diggs? Not during practice, during the game. What did you do to keep him under control? That's the first call I would make. To be quite honest.
You think a fellow contender would help him out like that?
I think Josh Allen, quarterbacks who have this union, he would tell him this is how you got to handle the guy. Because I want to know, I want the guy to be successful. And I want to be successful with the player. Players do it all the time. They call each other when a new coach gets hired and say, how was that coach? What kind of guy was he? So it's information. Different. Gather some information on Stefon Diggs.
The former defensive back with some insight on the quarterback union. Mike, the Texans also made a big addition to their backfield in Joe Mixon. What does he bring to this group?
Phil, this is an area they have a massive opportunity to get better. They were 29th last year in yards per rush. Joe Mixon is going to help not only running the ball, but sort of what we talked about with the short passing game. He's really good as a receiver. So, look, Stefon Diggs is going to get the headlines, deservedly so. But I think the impact of Joe Mixon actually could be more consequential because they have to be able to run the ball sometimes when the opposing defense is going to know they're going to run it. And that's something that Joe Mixon could do because of his physicality. So I think Mixon has a chance to have a massive imprint on this offense and change what was a negative into a positive in terms of rushing the ball this year.
Okay, so I love that, right? Because Diggs is obviously getting all the headlines. And I'm going to talk about both Diggs and just the run game in general. And the fact that we know, first of all, I think the defense is going to continue to get better, right? That's what D'Amico is going to be able to do. So you're going to have a more solid, ferocious, physical, intelligent defense, right? Check. That's going to be great. Now you're going to establish the run game, right? Now that's not only just going to help the offense in general, right? But it's also going to help the passing game. It's going to help C.J. Stroud. It's going to help the defense. It's going to eat up clock. Got that. Check. Now you move on to what Diggs can do. You don't need Diggs to be a superstar. Now, I've been comparing the Eagles in 22 to the Houston Texans of how they were kind of like a piece away. They went out and got A.J. Brown. Boom. Went to the Super Bowl. A play away from winning the Super Bowl against, the dynasty of the Kansas City Chiefs. So I'd say that was a pretty big success. And if they didn't have A.J. Brown, that wasn't happening. And I said, this is what's similar to that is that the Texans see, because I forget who just said this, but he was like, I believe the expectations are high for the Texans. Oh, you believe that? Really? No, duh. Like, of course the expectations are high. Everyone thinks that. Like, they are legitimately Super Bowl contenders. I don't think that's a hot take. And I think their intentions are to get to a Super Bowl and win a Super Bowl. I believe that they believe that. That's why they went out and got the pieces that they got, which I think is amazing. Because they were already a great team last season, and now they said, let's get even better. We know C.J. Stroud's great, but let's not just rely on that. Let's make his life even easier so he can really be great week to week and not just lean on him at drive after drive after drive after drive. That's what establishing the run game does. That's what's getting better at defense. That's what it's like to get more weapons to work with. So I think the Texans are in a great spot. And the reason why I also brought up the Eagles now again is that They don't need Stefon Diggs to be A.J. Brown. That's the beauty. I think Diggs will have some of those epic A.J. Brown games that he's had for the Eagles, where you're just like, oh my God, this is great. But he does not need to do that consistently at all. What he needs to do is be who Diggs has been. And the best thing that, because the question is kind of like, can he make an immediate impact on the Texans offense? And more than anything, it's just the pure reliability, right? It is when CJ Stroud needs to kind of get the ball out of his hands and he needs to get it to a receiver, Diggs is a guy who you have the reliability. I know, famously he did drop some passes with Josh Allen, but for the most part, you can trust him. He is reliable. And to me, that matters more. We can talk about his route running, right? We can talk about him being physical, him even being a leader now. Those are all great, definitely. But it's actually, to me, the reliability factor. Because a lot of times when you get to like the second or third wide receiver, it's just, things start to just get a little wonky, right? You just don't have that reliability. You just don't know if you throw it up to that guy, is he going to catch it, right? Is he going to get it? Is he going to run the right route? Is he going to be in the right spot at the right time, right? Like, is he going to do those things? You just don't know. Once you get to, honestly, for some teams, it's the second wide receiver, but most teams, it's usually once you get to the third, you're just like, I don't know, right? Like, can this guy do what we need to do, especially come time playoffs? And usually what ends up happening in some of these playoff games or a random game during the season, you do have that third wide receiver randomly step up and look like he's a dog. And you're like, oh my God, that was a total, game changer. No one was really expecting that. And it ends up being the difference between them winning and losing. We see that again and again and again and again and again and again. And now with Diggs, you have that solidified. You have that down. You don't have to question that. You don't have to really favor, because again, it depends on where you're going to put Diggs on the chart, whether it's wide receiver 1, 2, or 3. Doesn't really matter. But my point is that you have 3 options in that regard where you just have the confidence, right? You don't really have to lean on one or the other because all 3 are completely viable. And to me, I always say the sky's the limit, but now the options are just as vast as the sky, right? If you have an established run game, you have these weapons. It's just, to me, and then you're going to have Bobby Slowick designing these plays, scheming these guys open. Oh my God. And you're going to have a defense that you should probably have the lead more often than not. You're going to be able to play with the lead. It's just kind of like, forget about it, man. So I just really think the Texans are set up to just be legit fast, and potentially not look back, right? I really, really am so high. There's this idea that CJ Stroud is going to take a step back. I don't even have the strength to keep arguing against that because it's just nonsense. That's implying that CJ Stroud was never really that good of a quarterback, that he just had like one good year. And I'm the first one to admit and say this, that the NFL is littered with quarterbacks that have only had 1 or 2 good years only to come back down to earth. But when you actually look at those quarterbacks, you can see that, you know what, it was a really easy schedule, or they actually really relied on their run game, or they had an amazing defense that was giving them great field position game after game, so they were really able to stack up touchdowns, or they had plenty of these easy little throws that really ended up turning into massive gains. Like, if you just really watch the games, you can see it's a little bit of fool's gold. There is nothing fool's gold about CJ Stroud and what he can do on the football field. Nothing. There's no reason to believe. Like, I hate this argument, well, now that they have film on him, or his schedule is going to be harder. Yeah, he's a great football player. Great football players can still play when there's film on them, as well as playing a harder schedule. So it's just like, just stop with that. There's no reason to believe that CJ Stroud can't handle that. And if CJ Stroud can handle that, then there's no reason to believe that the Texans won't be great. So I'm personally a little bit exhausted by all of that. That's why, like, oh my God, I'm making this video at 1:45 in the morning. And it's just like, we're so close to the season starting where we can no longer just speculate about this. And I can just now be like, see, they're clearly good. Stop saying they're not. We have evidence now, right? It is technically just a prediction. Technically, the Texans could just be absolutely terrible and garbage. And CJ Stroud could have just had one great season, and now he's just going to keep going downhill. Technically, that is a possibility, but I don't think it's happening. And I think the Texans are for real. And I think C.J. Stroud is at the top of my list for MVP candidate. So I would be shocked personally to see the Texans anything short of an AFC Championship game. I mean, the only way that that's not going to happen is if truly Kansas City is absolutely balling out. Lamar Jackson has been absolutely unleashed. He's done with this nonsense of him having failed, failures in the playoffs. He's done with that. He's overcome those demons. Joe Burrow, 100% healthy. He's ready to go. He's ready to remind everyone, yo, I was the #1 pick for a reason. I'm actually better than Patrick Mahomes. Stop it with this nonsense. I've just been injured. Like, that's the only way that I see those things happening. If it just becomes, again, the AFC as a whole now has just become a ruthless quarterback gauntlet, then it's just like, well, who knows what the difference is. But that's probably not going to happen. So I really think the chances for the Texans to have this success is going to be huge, very likely. And to me, when you have such a great quarterback, and you have then if you can have a reliable, consistent, hard physical defense, when you can establish the run game and you have weapons, I'm failing, and you have the coach to be able to rally them all together and tie it all together, I'm just failing to see how this team can be anything but great. But those are just my thoughts. I would absolutely love to hear yours. What do you guys all think? How quickly do you think Stefon Diggs can have an impact on the Texans, and what type of impact do you think he'll have? And just what about the Texans in general? Let me know in the comments below. I read every single comment, so whether you agree with me or disagree with me, either way, let's get in some discussions, let's get in some fights, but ultimately, let's just have some fun. And please do consider subscribing. We are building an amazing community here, and I would absolutely love to see you part of it. I want to build something that we all genuinely feel connected to, something that we're really excited to be part of. I think we're well on our way to doing it. And please don't forget to give this video a thumbs up, as it really does help with the visibility and the algorithm. Thank you so much, and see you next time.